Today, just having my coffee. Literally just went to the gym. Setting yourself for a good day. Had to do it in the morning because from my experience, usually when you do or I do in the afternoon and everything else, usually that just doesn't happen, or I'm just too tired, or like just give a half-hour workout, right? Which is still better than nothing. But rather do it in the morning, right? And so that's it. Today for our session together, I'm gonna dive deep and I'm going to share basically what we have done and observed with some of our own advisory clients who have like used these strategies to reach out to warm market, right? And I'm going to talk about this today purely because I've on average I go on like 4 to 5, probably four, more like four calls with like different advisors every day, and so you have and with the coachings and everything else, it's more than that. But like I always get this like so often, which is like, after somebody tried doing warm and then guess what happened? Their warm market dried up. And then what's going to happen is that, they either try to do referrals, which they can't, or they end up doing cold, right? And then they start doing cold, they realize it's a whole different game to play, and then end up, they literally just fade off from there, right? Either they start earning money, but they hit the prospecting method, or, things like that, right? And so that's today, if you want to learn, basically, what are some of the things that we have done that we have own self observed from our advisors as well that worked very, very well when it comes to war market. And it's also the same strategy that earned me more than $500,000 in my first 2 years as a FA in the business at a point in time. And plus, this just two of our clients, and in fact there's actually more, but I just want to pick up like these two folks who have been consistently using strategy and earn them like more than $500,000. So technically speaking, what we're going to share today, it's has generated more than $1 million like FYC, right? I'm not talking about like bonuses, kind of shit, like $1 million FYC, okay, over the last few years, right? So let's talk about it, okay? So now I'm going to share my screen and we get this going, okay? So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask inside chat. If I have time, I'll reply you guys, so you guys get clarity, okay? So let's go. Okay, great. Business Hour episode 2. Okay, welcome to Business Hour episode 2, and all that stuff, right? So first things first, right? Let me just draw it out, which is this. Okay, so first things first, what's the game plan, right? Okay, so the game plan, the objective, it's, I'll just put down the objective here. I'll share with you basically the two strategies. And so far in my years in the industry over the last like 7 8 years, right? Like this is probably like just the only two strategies I've seen working well, very, very well so far. Other than like Project 100, which honestly doesn't really work the best after a short period of time, right? And so basically these are two strategies that generated more than $500,000 for two of our clients, right? And I'm just going to share with you like what they did and how it works out, right? Of our clients. Okay. So now let's talk about the problem first. So the first premise that we want to always think about when we want to approach warm market or even like cold market for the extent, right, is that we always must go back to what we call like the temperature of the market. And so typically speaking, there are a few circles, right? Or like a few temperature, right? And so in the middle is your hot market. And hot market doesn't mean that it must necessarily be your mother and father. I think to us, at least we define like the temperature has a lot to do with, how close you are with the person, right? And so you might, your mom and dad might not, or your brothers and sisters might not necessarily be a hot market. They might actually just be warm or semi-warm, right? If you didn't talk to them as much. And so hot market is really more like, okay, if you call a friend, you have a friend that you meet like almost every week, talk every day kind. And if you just say you want to meet and they're willing to meet kind, yeah, there's like really hot market, right? People that are steady to kind of meet you kind, right? So there's hot market. And then after that, then you have what I call a warm market, right? And so warm market, so I think of hot market as nearly almost as though like they are BFF, right? Almost as though they are very, very best friends, very, very good friends, so on and so forth. Now for warm market, it's not so much about like, I think you guys are still probably like friends. You kind of like know each other, meet every quarter, maybe once, twice a year, kind of like warm and chat a little bit on IG and kind of stuff. Yeah, that's probably more like warm, right? So that's kind of like the second circle. And then the third one, then is what we call like semi-warm, followed by the last one, which I draw one more, is basically your cold, right? Cold market. Or rather, just anything outside or semi-warm is basically cold. right? That's kind of big idea here, right? It's all cold, it's all cold, it's all cold. So now here's the thing. When you so semi-warm up, okay, so think of semi-warm as people that you have not seen in the last like 3, 10 plus years, right? So you think of people that perhaps maybe let's say you're in your 30s or your 25s or like whatever, and then you think of like people that were in uni, JC, maybe if you've been through army, like this, there's probably those kind of groups that you kind of know have spent some time together, or maybe just acquaintances where like in school, you all know each other's existence, maybe only chat once or say hi once, but like never ever talk again kind, right? Yeah, and this group of people is what we call the semi-warm market, right? And so that's how it is. So let me explain what's the problem here to begin with. So typically what happens, right, is that when you go into when you first start off your basically your journey here in as an advisor, what tends to happen is that okay, they'll say go for your hot market, right? Because your hot market basically, let me use a different color. Because your hot market in essence are the ones that give you the lowest hanging fruit. And so that's where people will do, if I just put it here, that's where people do Project 100, right? They'll start doing Project 100, you know. And the thing is that Project 100, obviously you probably wouldn't have 100 best friends, if you will, right? Like you probably wouldn't have 100 like great friends, probably like 20, 15, 20 kind around the range, right? And so this is where usually like you get your first pot of gold, you earn some money, you have the close cases, you close your own cases, and everything else, right? And then what happens is that as part of the Project 100, is that you will eventually and quickly you get into the warm market, right? And so this is where again it leads to Project 100, right? And so when you list down your Project 100 for most people that I've seen so far, is that you will typically attack. I would say attack. I think that's the wrong word. I think you typically approach kind of like your hot and your warm market, right? And so that's how it looks like, right? So then now you have okay, your hot, and then you have warm market. And so unless you have a very vast network, what tends to happen is that you would probably have less than 100 contacts that you can really approach, or you might have 200, but then again, like these are people that might not really like meet you, right? Or not that close to you. And so that's kind of like what happens, right? And so this is what we call Project 100. Okay. Now, the key thing about Project 100, right, is that I think we need to first understand. I've trained and coached a lot of agency leaders as well. Yeah, and me being an agency leader in the past, right? And so the key idea of Project 100 is really to just get your low hanging fruits, right? Low hanging fruits, And the reason for that is because if you join the industry and it's so like scary, right? Like you don't know where your prospects coming from, you never done sales before, yada yada. And so Project 100 is like, okay, let's do it, right? Because even if you don't really know how to sell and everything else, it's like so much easier, because when someone really trusts you, and you just explain a bit of concepts, go through the products, and typically that's where you're able to, generally close the sale. But there's a few problems when that happens after you do Project 100, right? And so one of the things is that you will kind of like run out of your hot and warm market very fast, right? You'll run out of hot and warm market very fast, right? Because your hot and warm market, obviously. So the thing here is this, right? I think we have to be careful with the terms that we use, because every time someone will always tell me like, hey, Ben, my warm market dried up, right? So what they're really essentially saying is that they are hot and like warm market dried up, like in these two circles. But what didn't dry up is actually their semi-warm market, right? And or sometimes they'll say things like, oh, Ben, I don't have a very big warm market, right? I don't have a very big, like, I don't have a lot of very good friends or whatever it is, so on and so forth. And here's the misconception, right? Like the thing here is this, how many best friends can you have? Right? If you have like 1,000 best friends, I don't even know if they're really best friends, right? Like there's so many friends that you can have that's really, really close to you, which means to say, by default, naturally, your hot and your warm market has to be small. Like based on the nature of like the definition of like really like hot and warm temperature, your quote unquote market will definitely be small, right? And so every time someone finish up, exhaust the hot, exhaust the warm, and then they're like, okay, bye-bye, right? I got no warm anymore. Let me try to do referrals. Let me try to do, and then they'll go into here, right? They'll instead of doing semi-warm, they'll go into the cold, right? Maybe I should try doing roadshows, try doing cold calls, lead gen, door knocks, canvassing, whatever, right? And that's one of like the biggest mistakes that I've seen people doing who starts with warm, right? Now, if you are someone who only start with cold, I think like you can just do cold all the way, and it's a tough process, but like, you're going to make it at some point in time, right? But if you have started with warm, then you probably wouldn't want to change to cold immediately or even at all, because like it's a whole different ballgame, right? Because When you go to cold, it's a new method. And even with cold, there's so many methods, right? Roadshows, dawn, lead gen, whatever. And each of the method requires a different process. It requires a different, what we call mentality as well as you go into those processes, right? Because if you think about like warm, you can kind of like chill, talk out a little bit, so on and so forth. But when the moment you go to cold, like roadshows, basket, like you got to pull them in, sit them down, and then like try your very best to be a little bit more assertive to close the sale, right? And try to like close on the spot, right? Close the cash you, whatever, right? And so like it's a whole different like ball game altogether, right? And it affects you a lot. And so what we really want to do, like here's where the golden thing of like not running out of your hot and warm market like that easily, right? It's you want to go for the semi-warm market, right? This is the part that you definitely like. Most people kind of know that. Actually, this is not even a new concept. Like most people want to go into semi-warm market, because that's where there's a bigger group, right? Like it makes more sense that you probably know more people whom you only met once or twice as acquaintances and chat once or twice, but are not really friends, right? It only makes sense you have more of that. And so when you have more of that, that's where the market that you want to go for. The challenge here is that most people do not know how to approach a semi-warm market. And that's where, like, you know what, they realize like the methods are not working and then they just move on and so on and so forth, right? And so think about it, right? Which brings up to the next concept, which is very simple. Your messaging, meaning say your approach, right? Or how your approach is like when you go for different markets must be aligned with the temperature of the market, right? It must be aligned with the temperature of the market, right? This is the next thing or the premise that we need to understand every time we want to like prospect or, basically approach people. And so what I mean here is very simple, right? So I want you to just imagine this. If let's say today you have, let's say hypothetically speaking, right? Just imagine this scenario where, let's say I'm your best friend, okay? Let's say I'm your best friend, right? And then what happens is that, you maybe I went to Africa for like half a year or something like that, right? And then suddenly like I came back and then you're at the airport or something like that, you're waiting for me, right? And then I see you, I get excited, and then I'm going to give you a big hug, right? Because like you're my best friend, I've missed you and everything else, right? Now, what's going to happen is that when I hug you, you probably hug me back, right? Or you probably be like, it feels normal. Make sense? Now, and everything is fine. But then here's the next thing, right? If I'm a legit like cold stranger or even some form of acquaintances or whatever it is, right? And then like, let's say cold stranger, I walk out of the airport, I saw you waiting there, and then I just kind of like go and give you a hug. What do you think is going to happen? You're probably going to like, you're going to push me off. You're going to think I'm a creep. You're going to think I'm crazy, right? You're going to feel very uncomfortable. And so it's the same thing over here, right? So if you think about this, right, is that what's the difference between these two scenarios? The first let's talk about similarities, right? The similarity is that the hug remain the same. And so my way of approaching is actually the same. It's still the same hug. But realize that you get a different response in two different scenarios, right? And so the difference here is just based on the temperature of a relationship or how much we know. Make sense? Right? And so that's why when you approach whole market, you got to approach in a different manner, right? When you approach hot market and warm market, you got to approach it in a different manner. And when you approach your semi-warm market, it has to be a different manner, right? And so why am I explaining this? Because it's such a crucial concept that really messes up a lot of advisors. And if you get this, like the way you look at prospecting and how you approach is like, it will change like, I don't know, 180 degrees, right? I think it's 100, not 360, 180 degrees, right? And so let me explain, right? So project 100, right? What tends to happen is that the way project 100, the approach is more direct, right? It's usually more direct. And so it will sound something along the lines of like, you either call them or you text them, and then you will say something like, hey, it's been a while since we last caught up. How are you? Anyway, I'm a financial planner from, I don't know, Prudential, from whatever, AXA, whatever it is, right? Or HSBC. And then, I was just thinking if I can do a policy review for you, right? Or I'm just thinking that, I'm doing a survey or like, I want to practice my script, something along those lines, right? And so it's more of a direct approach, right? And here's the thing. If you use a direct approach for your hot and warm market, chances are it will work. So I repeat, if you use a direct approach, which is your project 100 approach, right? For your hot and warm market, chances are it will work. And so if you think back to your experience where you have people that are closer to you and they say, hey, I just joined, can meet up, maybe I practice and then see what I can do a review, right? Chances are they're probably okay, right? They're probably okay, and that's fine. Now, the misconception or the mistake is that once they do the hot market, you see, when I use this approach, I do hot market, I can meet people and can close, right? So what happens is that, hey, good, there's a positive reinforcement that, okay, this is working, right? And then what happens is that then you try to do it for your warm market, right? People who are not as close as you, to you. And then you're like, let's try this out because I've done this, it worked. And so I'm thinking that it makes sense that with my warm market, it'll probably work the same as well with this approach. And so you try it. And then you start to realize that the effectiveness, right, isn't as good as the hot market. You realize that the effectiveness isn't as good as the hot market, right? And so, but guess what? Maybe it's just a law of large numbers, right? And then your manager or boss will say, you know what, you should just do more, right? Just call more people, text more people, you got so many contacts in your phone books, right? That's typically how it is. And you try to do more. And then guess what happens? You'll try to use the same approach to the semi-warm market. You use the same bloody approach to the semi-warm market, right? And then what tends to happen is that this where, right, people will definitely try to either ghost you, they'll blue tick you, right? Or worse, they just block you, okay? Right? And chances are of you really getting someone, or if they're kind enough, you know what they tell you? They say that, hey, I already got an FA already. That's usually kind of the challenges here when you try to approach your semi-warm market with a direct approach. Okay. And then that's where, people get sad. They feel like they can't sustain this industry. And then they try to do cold market and then they get wrecked over there as well. Okay. So you get a point, right? And so going back to the whole circle of okay, the way you approach, how you approach people must match the temperature of the market, right? Now, you might be thinking, but Ben, when I approach my cold market, when I cold call them or whatever it is, right? I can just be more direct, and tell them this is my plan, this is my product, I can just really dive deep, so on and so forth, right? Yeah. And so it's kind of different because when you do with cold market, and so let me explain this a bit. When you do with cold market, right, what truly matters to them is a lot to do with, let me just put it here, right? Easier. So there's your few levels, right? And so let's say there is your hot market, there's your warm. Okay, let me just put hot and warm. And then there's your semi-warm. Okay. And then there's cold. And so if I were to put it here, and then I draw, maybe I just put it here, and I say, okay, if you want to do your hot market or warm market, typically speaking, right, the approach. So I put here, approach. And then I put another one, what they care about, right? What they care about. Okay, so let's put it this way. Now, if you approach a hot and warm market, what your hot and warm market people, what the prospects basically care about, right, is they care about the relationship that they have with you, right? And so what happens is that because you're hot and warm with them, which means to say that they know that you care about them. That's why there's a relationship that is good to begin with, and they mutually care about you, right? And so in this case, the relationship part, right, is already settled. Make sense? And so what tends to happen is that what they're lacking of is just okay, what do you have to offer in terms of expertise? And so the approach tends, and you can get away with, what am I writing? Okay, the approach, right, can tend to be more direct. Let me just, the approach, right, can tend to be more direct, right? So this works. Now, when you go to the cold market, right, it's actually the other way around. When you go to the cold market, what they care about is less about the relationship, but they care more about the expertise. Now, it's not that they don't care about relationship at all, but when you first want to get the appointment, what gets you in the appointment is your expertise, right? And so expertise in terms of okay, can you basically help them solve a problem that they want to solve? Right? Want to solve, or what kind of benefits that you can give them. So they care about expertise, right? What's the benefit? What's in it for them, in short, right? Once you can approach them with, some of expertise they can do, which is why you see a lot of ads, right? Those core ads, and then they see something along the lines of do you want to get another 4% in your CPF, something like that, right? Or they say hey, do you want to pay less, for your insurance, yada, whatever, right? So there's some form of benefit, and core people care about the benefit because they have no time to build a relationship with you. Make sense? And so what they care about is actually the problem that you can solve. And so the approach, right, still can be more direct, right? But you start to realize that the direct, right, is in a sense whereby it's not so much about you see the direct here is more okay, I just want to approach you, I just say I can do policy review, right? Because the relationship is settled. In the core market, you need to go direct because they only care about benefits. Then they care about relationship later. Make sense? Right? And so that's the hot, warm, and cold market. Now, the tricky part is a semi-warm market. And this is where, again, where most people should be going for when you want to do your warm market, or rather like if you don't want to do cold, right? Semi-warm market is that what they care about actually, which is surprising, to some or actually to most, what they actually care about, right? It's the relationship first plus your expertise, right? So they're kind of like in a half-half. But of course, make no mistake, right? That they still care about relationship first, right? The reason why, even though they could be 10 years ago and they never meet kind, right? If you approach, they don't care so much about expertise, it's because they kind of have a relationship with you. They kind of know you, right? They might not like really know you, but they kind of know your existence. They kind of like met you before. And so what they, in their impressions, is like, oh, there is a connection with you, right? Even though it could be 10 years ago, but there's still a connection. And so every time, if there's already an existing connection 10 years ago, and you approach them as though they are cold, which is just expertise, that's where it gets iffy. That's where it gets weird, right? Because they're like, oh, the last time I thought of Terrence was that he was this cute little guy in poly or whatever it is, and we kind of talk to each other. I think he's a nice guy. And then guess what happens? Terrence sent a direct approach message, which is like, hey, I just joined Prudential. Can I help you with this? Then guess what's going to happen? It's going to ruin the impression that they had of you 10 years ago. And so a lot of times, right, people tend to think that, hey, if I have not met someone for the last 10 years, I should just approach them directly, right? But that's a big mistake, because to you, 10 years is a long time. And yes, while they might be colder, the challenge here is that in your prospects' heads, your semi-warm prospects' head, their impression of you was 10 years ago, where you're still kind of that guy or that girl that, that is pretty okay with them, so on and so forth. Make sense? Right? And so that's where the disconnect happened. And so when you approach people with a direct approach, like a Project 100 basically, for your semi-warm, that's where you'll screw up. For sure. Like 100%. Right? And then, of course, you go through the list and then nobody else, and then that's where you die and you go to core market insertion. Right? And so that's basically where how the semi-warm market is like, which means to say what they care about is the relationship first, followed by the expertise. Okay, they care about the relationship first, then followed by the expertise, right? And so the approach is not direct, just how you do for hot, warm, or even cold, but the approach is indirect, right? And that's the biggest shift that we got to make, right? And most people like find it hard. But honestly, like, it's way easier than you think, and which is why I'm going to share this today, right? And so we're going to go with the indirect method. Okay. Now, just some caveat over here. And so every time we talk about like indirect method and everything else, which, you can build a relationship, yada, yada, disclaimer or caveat, right? One of the key things or objections that people usually give or have is that, oh, but Ben, I feel fake. I feel fake for, catching up with them, building a relationship, yada, yada, right? Then after that, go into business and everything else, right? So they feel fake, right? They feel fake. But let me just say this first. If you feel fake about catching up with someone and everything else, right? Then it just means, right, that either one of two things happen. Either number one, you have some form of expectations when you go in for the catch-up session, or number two, you actually don't care. You don't genuinely care about this person, right? This person. And so when it comes to expectations, and that's what I mean here is very simple. When let's say you build a relationship with someone, you catch up with them, so on and so forth, like the objective is to build the relationship and warm up the relationship. The byproduct of building a relationship, it could hopefully lead to an opening or a business appointment, in short. Right? And so like the key thing here is that if you go with the expectations that, like, if I do this relationship with this person, I better get, for example, like, a opening appointment. Now, if you have the kind of mentality, then you're going to feel fake. You're going to feel a bit awkward and everything else, right? Because you're not actually being present, because you're attached to the outcome more than attaching to yourself to the process. And so instead of like having expectations, to me, the way I look at it so far that seems helpful for some of our own clients, right, is that instead of expectations, you just want to hope, right? And so in short, it's kind of like, look, I want to catch up with you, and I hope that perhaps it might lead to opening appointment, but if it doesn't, it's fine. I still love to catch up with you, right? Like, that's the kind of mentality or the things you want to say in your head, right? That versus like, oh, I want to catch up with you so that I can, get an opening appointment, right? Now, if you have the kind of the second mentality, then you're attached to the outcome more than the process. Make sense? Right? So we want to hope and not expect. Like the TLDR is in order to for you not to be fake, is you want to hope and not expect, right? And the thing here is that like chances are like if you do the process I'm going to share with you, like you'll definitely get a lot more business appointments by hoping more than expecting, right? Because when you have expectations and you fail to get the opening appointment, and then you feel like socializing is a bit of time, yada yada, and that's where you get screwed, right? Okay, so that's number one. Now, number two, what I've seen so far for people feeling fake when they want to do indirect matter, whether it's to catch up with them, help them with something, yada yada, has a lot to do with the fact that they actually don't care about this person. And when I say I don't care, right, it means to say that either number one, right, they just dislike this person, meaning to say, right, that like they just hated this person, right? But they just approach this person because might be able to give an opening appointment, some sales and everything else, right? Yeah. And so that's weird, right? And so the powerful thing about your warm market is that you kind of like can choose right onset the people that you want to work with. And so if you have someone that 10 years ago they bully you, or like you think they are bitch about certain things, you just didn't like their vibe at all. And then like 10 years later, they're still the same. And then you're like, I approach them just because I need some money. Okay, I would strongly encourage not for you to not do it, right? Because if you can't care about, you see, the key thing is that they want to know whether you demonstrate care and relationship, right? You care about relationship. And so if you don't care about them, which means you don't care about relationship, it's very hard for you to even go to a business appointment. And I'd rather you not do it altogether, right? Now, the third one, now that I think of it, is that there are some people that just finds it hard to care about people, right? They have no interest in them, yada yada. Let me just say something, okay? You're in the people business, and so therefore, being genuinely interested is a what? Being genuinely interested, right, is a skill set of its own. Being genuinely interested is a skill set of its own, right? And if you are someone that says that, you know what, Ben, I'm not a people person, I'm not whatever, right? Then you're just labeling yourself and making yourself lose before even starting this industry, right? Or even being in this industry, And so it's the same thing, right? Nobody or rarely will have people come into this industry and then they say, oh, I know how to prospect, I know how to sell. Rarely, right? Unless they're from some other sales job or whatever, right? But for the most group of people, like most people do not prospect, most people do not sell. But then guess what we do? We learn how to prospect, we learn how to sell. And same thing over here, being genuinely interested. We might be, before joining the industry, we could have been people who are introverts. We actually don't care about people as much. We just go do our jobs, go home, or we study and then we go home and then we don't care about people, right? We just want to be our own world. We play video games, whatever, right? Maybe we are those kind of people, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Because now, if you want to be genuinely interested, it's a skill set. And so if you relabel the very fact that these are skill sets that you can acquire by genuinely being interested in someone, then what's going to happen is that like you can only get better. And being genuinely interested in someone, right, doesn't seem fake anymore because it's genuine. It's a skill set altogether, right? Rather than a mindset, or rather than oh, this was me, this is my identity. I'm an introvert, I don't talk to people, right? And so that's why I really hate all this anagram thingy, right? Anagram, their SE profile, yada yada, everything else, right? Because people start, I think it's good to know. But then people start labeling themselves as such, right? Oh, I'm a type 3 wing 88, whatever fuck, right? That they use, And then the thing is like, okay, like you saying that and you labeling yourself that, like, is that helping you to move forward, right? Because what happens is that you want to understand and be aware of yourself so that it can help you to empower you towards your goals. But what happens is that most people try to use all the DIC, Enneagram, whatever profile, right? And they tend to limit themselves on why they shouldn't do things. Oh, I'm an introvert. I'm a type 8, whatever fuck, right? And then it's like, oh, that's why I cannot do this. Now, if you already label yourself as such, don't even need to worry about the tactics. You're going to fail. Okay? And so this is just really the big caveat that I want to share first. At this point in time, right? Okay, so never ever label yourself. If you're not a people person, you can learn to be a people person. It is what it is, right? It's like, I've never really draw and present like this or use iPad like years ago, I mean, like, it's always PowerPoint slides, in school, yada, yada. Yeah, but I learn as we go, right? I learn, and then now it's like a little bit more flexible. It's a lot easier, right? It just comes with practice, the skill set. Okay, so now, that being said, okay, just do a short summary, and then I'll go into like how you guys can really approach the ball. So, just recap what we've covered so far. The problem basically with the semi-warm market and why warm market or hot market dries up is because people tend to use Project 100 for the hot and warm market, right? Which works, but then they also try to do for warm market, which doesn't work, because we also mentioned that the temperature, the messaging should match the temperature of the market, right? And so that's the reason why it doesn't work. And what tends to happen is that most people will skip the semi-warm market, not because they don't want to approach, but they don't know how to. right? Or they just use Project 100 and finish everything, right? And that's why they go to cold, which is a whole new problem, right? And that's what I talk about. And we also talk about the different temperatures and what these prospects care about. And therefore, this would determine how we should approach them, right? And so, like, it's really just a reverse engineering kind of like thought process, which is like, if I hot a warm market, what do they care about? What do they care about? The relationship. And then I just need to ask, do I have a relationship with them already? Do they care about me? Do I care about them? Yes. Okay, then it's very easy to go direct, right? Like, hey, since we already trust each other, let's talk about business, right? If you want to. Then with cold market, then obviously it's like, okay, you know what? They don't give a shit about me. They don't know me. Yada yada. They only care about what I can do for them. And so expertise is important. I want to approach them, showing them that I can demonstrate, or demonstrating to them that I can solve a problem, demonstrating that I'm somehow authority, that I can really do things that could be helpful for them, right? And then if you're semi-warm, that's where the in-between happens, right? Where they care about relationship first, followed by the expertise. Okay, so that's kind of recap. And it was obviously we just covered the caveat part of things, right? Which is like, the only reason why I feel fake is because you have expectations versus hope. And number two, you actually don't care about the person. You already hated this person. Or number three, right? You just lack the skill sets of being genuinely interested. Okay, so let's read. Now, let's talk about the two strategies. And so, the first strategy is what I started teaching our clients, and something that I've done in my first couple of years as well. That we have a meal, right? And then the second strategy is something that after I started doing coaching and consulting in this business, that's where I learned about this strategy. And then we tried it with some of our clients, and it worked out very well. Okay, so number one, strategy one, right? We call it strategy one. Yeah, and so for strategy one, right? There's a one, two, three. Yeah, there's basically just the whole flow looks like this, right? Which is number one, you have to engage them. It's just very simple. Engage, catch up, by the way, plus ask. And then this leads to your opening and then closing. Okay, opening and then closing. Okay, and so this is strategy one, right? And so essentially for strategy one, right, let me break it down a little bit more. So what I mean by engage, and so just taking note, right? Just a reminder, who are we approaching? We are not approaching warm, we are not approaching cold, we are approaching semi-warm. Okay, just as a reminder, this is the group of people that we are actually approaching. Okay, semi-warm. So 5-10 years in a mid kind, right? And if you call them out of nowhere, then they are like that. Okay, so strategy one. First thing you want to do is to engage them, right? And so the way that we really want to engage them, it's so engaging is basically just reaching out to them, right? And the good thing about like warm market or semi-warm market, right, is that everybody already has leads, right? Like warm market is basically leads. The phone number in your contact is actually leads, right? And because a lead is merely just a name and a contact number. And so everybody has leads. And so you just want to engage them, right? And the way you want to engage them is like, okay, the old way of doing things is like, I just want to do Project 100, which we all know it doesn't work. And so what you really want to do instead is that you want to start having, you want to start showing, like the showing genuine interest in them. Remember, the strategy is that they want to care whether they want to know whether you care about them, right? So you want to show genuine interest in them. And the way to show genuine interest in them, right, is very simple. Instead of calling them or like texting them and saying that, hey, I want to do XYZ or whatever it is, or like even going for the catch up. So what a lot of people do, right, is that they realize the direct approach is not working. They try to tend to go to the catch up portion, which is like you call someone straight away or you text them straight away and say that, hey, Elton, it's been a while, man, how are you? Then after that, hey, by the way, let's catch up for lunch soon. Right. And so, like, while that is not really wrong, it's not going to be most effective because guess what's going to happen? When you call someone who have not met for the last 3, 5, 10 years, and they say, hey, bro, it's been a while, let's catch up. What do you think they're going to feel? Or what do you think they're going to think? Chances are, number one, they're going to feel that you are either number one, property agent, MLM scam, or insurance agent, right? Like either one of these three things, and the reason for that is because the gut is up, right? And everybody feels that way. And so it's just psychology, right? And so instead of like trying to go with that approach, you want to show genuine interest. Let me just show genuine interest in what they do, what they are doing, what they are doing, right? And so what tends to happen is that like you want to find out like what are they doing currently, right? So what's really useful that probably might not have been the case like 10, 20 donkey years ago is that now we have like all the platforms, right? IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, um, what else we have? Xiaohongshu, right? Lemonade, so on and so forth, right? With all these platforms, right? Typically, most people, if you are like Singaporeans, truly you use IG, Facebook, LinkedIn, right? Younger folks uses IG, older folks uses Facebook, right? And then older folks plus want to be professional, they use LinkedIn. That's kind of like how it is, right? The Xiaohongshu, Lemonade, all these are usually what we've seen so far, if you are like Malaysian PR, like you're PR in Singapore, foreigner kind of stuff, and then that's where you usually use it. But anyway, you want to go to these platforms, right? And then you start, quote unquote, right? Start finding these prospects or these people that you actually want to approach. Because what tends to happen is that they're going to be posting something on social media, right? And all you have to do is to just engage by showing genuine interest. That's about it, right? And so the way to look at it, this is what something I've done, right? Is I just need to comment on their stories and then ask them a question. Ask them a question. And then this will lead to what we call a conversation, right? This will lead to a conversation because it's like, hey, Elton, the dog looks cute. What breed is it, right? And then they say, oh, it's a Maltipoo, whatever, right? And then they say, oh, cute. How long is this? Is it a fur kid? Oh, it's X, Y years. Oh, it's whatever, right? And so that's where like the engagement and you have a conversation. Essentially, you want to have a conversation, right? Now, why you want to have a conversation? Just in case, like, I need to, like, you need the explanation for like, why we need a conversation. Other than the very fact that, of course, we're showing genuine interest, but conversations increases temperature of the market. The more conversation you have with someone and the more they reply, basically, like the conversation is 2%, right? So the more you talk, the more they talk and everything else, that's where your relationship and the temperature of the relationship gets better, right? And it's proven. Because if you are married today, you are attached today with a partner and everything else, right? Try talking to him or her once a year. Try just having one conversation once a year. You tell me like you're still going to be together? Probably not, right? And so like conversations facilitates the temperature of the market. And so if you go back to the circle again, what we're trying to do is that, okay, maybe someone, if you look at my cute little handwriting here, someone, I joined this X, someone could be right at the end of the semi-warm market, meaning say, right, if you didn't know them, they'll probably be cold market already, right? So they are right at the corner. And so what you want to do, right, and most people are basically the semi-warm market, and so what you want to do, right, is to shift them a little bit closer to the warm market. Make sense? Shift them a little bit closer to the warm market. Why do you want to do it? Very simple. Because you realize Project 100, when you go for the direct ask, works better with hot and warm market, right? And so what we want to do is, we know that if we shift this X to here, this X, the temperature to this X over here, what's going to happen is that when you go for the ask for an opening appointment where they can help them with something, guess what's going to happen? They are going to be way more receptive. You see? Can you see? Like, this is how entirely like, it works out, And so that's the whole point, right? Why we have conversations, because it increases temperature, and increasing temperature means we have increased chances of an opening appointment when we ask, right? And let me just tell you one secret, and because you guys are amazing, you guys, whether you're watching this recording later on or like just being here, the very fact is that like most people don't do, oh no, shit. Yeah, most people, right, don't do this. Like most people don't do this green color part, like of trying to get from here to here, right? They don't do it, right? Because to them, it's like, oh, I only want to do opening and closing. I want to do hot and warm market, yada, yada. Yeah, you need to understand, hot and market is very, very small. And so like where the large market is in a semi-warm market, right? I'm sure cold is a lot bigger, obviously, based on the nature of it. But then like semi-warm market is actually closer to the sale as compared to cold. Make sense? Like you just look at it, right? Cold is here, man. Right, cold is this big thing here. And so like where is it closer to the sale? Semi-warm or cold? Obviously, it's semi-warm, right? And so it's actually a lot easier to do semi-warm than to do cold, right? And so there's that. Okay, so have conversation, increase temperature equal to increase opening when we ask. That's basically about it, right? And so once we have a conversation with them online, right? So it's IG, Facebook, whatever. Then what tends to happen here is that, again, this is where people mess it up. Just because you talk to someone and have a good conversation on the online platform, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on whatever, does not mean that you can straight away go to the asking for an opening appointment. Please don't do that. Not with this strategy. Don't do that, right? Because it's too fast. right? It's kind of like dating apps, right? Like you go on Tinder, you go on Coffee Meets Bagel, whatever, right? Bumble, whatever it is. It's like you kind of like talk to this person. If the conversation goes well, then you go into what? You probably go into like, okay, let's meet up just to see each other. How is it like, so on and so forth. Then only after the meetup, which is called quote unquote a catch up, right? Then you will ask whether do you want to have a next appointment or rather a next meeting to carry on this, right? It's the same idea here. And you wouldn't want to be the kind of person, right? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying you probably wouldn't be the kind of person where you talk to someone on Tinder or Facebook or CMB or like Coffee Meets Bagel kind of like dating apps. And then once the conversation goes well, and then you say, hey, by the way, I'm horny. Do you want to have sex? You probably don't want to do that, right? Now, I'm sure there are people that say, okay, but what are the chances of them saying like, oh yeah, I'm out for sex too? Probably very low, right? And so what tends to happen is that like most people try to do that and go for an opening appointment, and that's where they screw up, right? And then they say, no, it's not working. Come on, right? And so what we've seen so far is just add one more step in here, which is basically the catch-up portion. Like you literally just have to catch up with them. Literally just have to catch up, right? And then based on the catch up and everything else, of course, you ask about them, they ask about you, yada yada. Then, of course, there's a like, there's some sort of structure and process to it. But the whole idea is that like you just catch up with them. And then at the end, right, if you want to, that's where most of us or where we do like, okay, we'll just do a by the way ask, right? Or like halfway, we'll say that, hey, here's something that I can do for you. Or like, I usually I've been hearing that, you have this issue or whatever, I can do a content presentation and share with you all my clients, whatever, right? So it's like an offer to help them with something, right? And so over there, then you go into opening, right? And that's how it is. You go straight in opening where you do concepts and then like review their policies, whatever it is, then you go into the usual sales process. Make sense? You go into your usual sales process. Okay. And that's kind of like how it is for this part, right? And so the thing here is that like this, by the way, ask thing, right? The ask is actually more like how your project 100 is like. The difference is that we are just adding two more steps, which is engagement and then the catch up portion. That will increase your chances way better, right? And so you might be thinking, okay, but Ben, this process seems longer, but it's not true, right? Like, okay, let me just put it this way. The process might seem longer because you're adding one more thing in, but your results overall will be faster because the effectiveness of you getting appointments is higher, you getting a catch up is higher, and then after catching up and building a relationship and then going for opening and closing, right, your closing ratio will also go up because you are building the trust and the temperature and the relationship. Make sense, right? And so that's basically this is a strategy, right? I won't go into opening and closing. This is for like another time on a business hour where I talk more about like how to do your sales better, so ask the right questions, yada yada, right? But in this like session together, like understand it's like engagement, add in a catch up, then just by the way ask. Literally, like that's it, right? Literally, it's so simple, right? The hard part is just that the hard part. Look, the process is simple. The hard part is this. The hard part is the caveat. People expect an appointment. People don't care about the people that they actually catch up with or talk to, and people are not genuinely interested. And so if you can hope, put a mentality of hoping, just being genuine, caring about them, you care about them, and then you're genuinely interested in what they do, and you really give a shit about them, like genuinely, yeah. That's how you're gonna like conquer the 7-1 market if anyone, right? Yeah. And so the process is simple. The hard part is all the caveats that I talk about, right? And so this is where the problem is. In terms of like quote unquote the skill set portion, not so much about the process, right? So that's strategy one. This is something I've done all the time, especially first 2 years. So it's what it is, right? And so that's strategy one. Okay. If you are this kind of person, if you want to do it this way, then that's for you. Okay. Now, here's the second strategy. Second strategy is where people, and this is who is it for, right? Okay, so strategy one, if you're more like you have a more sociable, if you are kind of person that really give a shit about people and everything else, not that strategy two don't give a shit about people, you still need to give a shit. It's just that strategy one is really more like it's just relationship, right? Then you go for the opening after that. Now strategy two are for people that is a little bit more like, okay, you care about the person, but yeah, at the same time you just want to demonstrate your expertise. And so for strategy two, the process looks like this, right? Is that there's still that social event. And so basically, right, it still remains the same where you still have engagement, right? You still have engagement, right? So you got to engage, talk to them, whatever, right? Then what you want to do, right, is that instead of a catch up, you do social event, right? So on and so forth, right? And so the social event, okay, yes, it could be catch up. Let me just put it here. It could be catch up. It could be, you play badminton with a group of people, that kind of stuff. So it could be social activities. It could also be things like, and this work very well if, like, this is where, okay, so in short, let me just term it this way so that's easier to understand for you guys, which is like social prospecting. Like, you can call this social prospecting. And so this is where, sometimes you have your own hobbies, right? So you have hobbies, you play golf, for example, you like to play mahjong. If you like to play mahjong or you like to drink, that kind of stuff, this is a better strategy for you, which is like you go for all the things that you always do, which is like play mahjong, gambling, whatever, right? And that's where the social events happen. Now, the social events, like, so this is where it happens, right? Now, of course, you can either create it and invite. Okay, so basically, you can either invite someone to your social event or get invited, either one, right? And that's where the engagement happens. Okay, so once you do like the social event, the root, then of course the next part here, then it goes back literally, right? It goes back to like the next part, which is you want to offer a service. Then over that service, then you have a service appointment. Then this will lead to your opening and then closing. Okay, that's how it is. So let me explain and break it down a little bit further. So think of it this way: the social events, let me drop one by one. So social events, right, is very simple. You just want to like just hang out with people, have fun, talk to them, nothing about work, right? Literally nothing about work. Just enjoy yourselves, right? And it's good for you because you probably enjoy it. And then once you do like the social events side of things, typically what we found, right, is that you want to do the social event 3 times with the same group of people or the same person, for example, right? And so it's like during the catch-ups or whether it's lunch, dinner, cafe hopping, gambling or whatever, you want to do at least about like the 3 times with them on 3 different occasions. So whether is it 1 week later, 1 month later, doesn't matter. It just depends on how frequent it is. But you do 3 times. Then on the third time, right, then you can ask or offer a service, right? And the ask, right, is offering a service in this sense. And so what is a service? Service is very simple. Service is just basically, right, can you help them solve a problem? Can you help them solve a problem? And so I give you the most simpler one that most people are doing, which a little bit more saturated but still working, which is the usual policy review, right? And so policy review in that sense, right, is a service. Why I say that? Very simple. When you help someone do a policy review, what you're trying to solve a problem, right? And the problem is that either they are overpaying, they're underinsured, right? Typically these two, or they don't have any insurance at all. And so you wonder, or they don't know basically what are they paying for, right? Or they just have question marks about it. And so you're trying to solve the problem by doing your Excel spreadsheet, right? By reviewing all the policies, taking time, yada, yada, and then giving them clarity on like, okay, this is what it is, so on and so forth, right? And so pause here, right? Once you've done this service, they get clarity on what's their shortfall, how much they're paying, so on and so forth. My next question here is very simple. Do you get paid? Does GE, Prudential, everybody, or whatever companies pay you? No, they don't. They don't pay you, right? And so what happens is that you just provided a service to someone, solve a problem, but you don't get paid. But here's the beautiful thing, right? Which is like, we all know that more often than not, once you offer the service, you have them do a policy review, which is policy review here, what's going to happen is that usually to opening, right? Because guess what? There's a problem. There's a shortfall, right? There's a shortfall, they're overpaying, you can restructure their policies, yada, yada, and then it leads to opening, and then you share the concept, and then it leads to closing. Can you see? Right? And so you want to offer a service. Now, just basically finding a problem that they have and then helping them to solve. There are other, to me, it's like, I think policy review is definitely the top thing, but there are other things you can help them with, right? Someone, let's say they want to buy a BTO or resale or condo, but they have no idea how much is it, or rather they're not very sure, they don't know what's the grants, they don't know whether they should do XYZ or whatever it is. Can you help them with that? BTO, you can do a spreadsheet, you can run through the discussion with them just to help them with it, so on and so forth. That's like BTO, right? Other things like, you have taxes, we have like all the CPF changes recently, or even like shields, so on and so forth, right? Yeah. And so this is just a service that you can really help, right? Which is what's the problem that they have and what can you help them with, right? And the idea here is that once you solve the problem, so if you look at this cute part here, once you have a problem and you solve it, guess what's going to happen? You're going to create another problem. And this is not like you go and purposely create another problem. Like, that's how life is, right? Life is never about having lesser problems. Life is about choosing which problems you want. And so the whole idea is like, okay, there's a problem, and then you solve it, and then solving it creates another problem, and then like you solve it, and then it creates another problem as well. So it's like people think that, if I'm rich, I will have my problem solved. Not true, right? You're just choosing what kind of problems you want to solve. And so if let's say you are poor, and then your problem is that you don't have enough money, let's say you earn $1 million a year right now. What's going to happen is that, okay, you have a lot of different problems right now. You know why? You have taxes. You have to know how to manage the money. right? You have people coming to ask you for money, right? You gotta allocate the resources accordingly. You need to talk about legacy. You need to talk about, so like you see, you realize you have more money, yes, but it creates a whole set of different problems, right? So it's about choosing which ones you want. Make sense? Okay, and so by that same logic, when you help someone solve a problem, you create another problem, and therefore that's where you get like, the opening appointment after that, and that's where the closing happens, right? And so to illustrate it in a policy review example, is that once you help someone solve the problem by doing a policy review, they get clear, right? But what's going to happen is that if let's say they realize that the problem is okay, what they get clear, but then the next problem happens, right? Which is like, okay, now they realize that they're not covered enough, or they're overpaying by $5,000 more a year. Then what are they going to do? They probably will want to reduce, for example, right? If they're overpaying, they want to pay lesser, right? It just makes sense. Pay lesser for the same coverage. But in order for them to do it, what's the next problem they're going to have? They need to buy something, right? They need to lapse the policy, need to restructure the policies, right? Who can help them with it? Guess who they're going to find? They're going to find you. Make sense? Right? And so if you go back to the policy review analogy and go back to what you've experienced before, it's the same process, right? The only thing that I'm saying is that, like, for a lot of advisors, our own clients, we don't do policy review as much. It's just like the fundamental thing, but we want to create or solve different problems that will lead to opening. And that's the key part. Make sense? And so you realize that, like, it's kind of like similar strategies, but it's just kind of like different at the same time. Because when you go for like the strategy one, right, it's really you're not doing any solving problems or whatever. You're just really building relationship and then going for the ask. That's how it is, right? This is something I've done. The next one is then, okay, you engage people, you go social events or whatever it is, and then you just offer a service and have to solve a problem, right? And so this is for more advisors who are more problem solvers. So if you're the kind that like you like to use spreadsheets, right? Like do reports year, this is probably like a better route, where you just catch up with someone and say, hey, you know what? Catch up a couple of times, 3 times. That's the average that we've seen that work very well. Now whether is it, let me just say, whether is it 3 times or not, really depends on what? Really depends on how far they are, right? So obviously, if someone is like here, your semi-warm prospect is here, maybe you just need to catch up once and then you can straight away go for the ask, right? But if they're here, hey, hang on. Obviously, if they're here, then you might need to catch up 3 times, then before you ask, go for the ask. So it really depends, right? But on average, you have to be safe, a high effectiveness rate. Typically it's 3. You can try to make do with 2. I wouldn't go more than 3. That's, by the way, just saying, really depends on context. But I wouldn't really go more than 3. Because if you go more than 3 and like by your 3rd time, you want to ask already, right? And if you still don't ask, then like you have a problem. You better just ask, right? Because you're either going to say yes or no. If they say no, it's fine because they're not going to feel that you're pushy because you actually want to help them with something. And then you still can catch up with them in the future again, right? Like, no, bro, So that's kind of like the strategy here for strategy 2. Okay. And so again, if you are a problem solver, if you are the kind that like to do numbers, spreadsheets, a ton of comparisons, if you are those kind, then I think strategy 2 is better because you can leverage on your own strengths and enjoyment, which is like you like to do all the number stuff, do spreadsheet, have them compare passive income, like comparison of credit cards. Like you like those kind, then strategy 2 is for you, right? There's way more value. But if you are the kind that, Ben, I don't even like to use spreadsheets. I hate it. I don't like to look at the numbers. I just like to build relationship. And then after that, just like, open, close them, and then just do my concepts. Okay, then strategy 1 is for you. Make sense? Right? So it depends on it. You can do a hybrid of it, which I won't go into, but it just really depends on like which strategy you want to apply. Okay. And so this is literally 2 strategies that has proven for 2 of our clients, especially. I mean, for more people, but they're the one that did the most. And so one of them did strategy 1, the other one did strategy 2. Both works amazing. Right? And so it really depends on like what you want, but in short, that's basically the strategies and how to really look at your warm market. And more importantly, having an idea of better premise or understanding of like hot, warm, semi-warm, how you want to basically match the messaging to the temperature of the market. And then there's basically the whole idea here, right? On the table, right? Of what they care about and what's your approach should be. What's the caveat here that you need to fix, right? Now, honestly, like just one final thing, if you're like, Ben, I don't actually, I really just don't care about people and everything else, then I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't know if this industry is for you. I don't know if this industry is for you because at the end of the day, this is a people business. Which one comes first? People, then business, right? And so especially even to go like core market or like even like I said that core market cares about expertise first, right? But you need to understand also whereby once the expertise gets them to meet you, But if they feel like you don't care about them, they're not going to buy from you either, right? Like nobody wants to buy from someone who doesn't care about them because we're all humans, And so I dislike the saying of like, oh, I want to do my core market because I don't think I'm good enough for my warm market. Then my question then becomes like, so you're giving a lousy service for your core market. Like, how does it make sense? Are they not humans at the end of the day? They are, right? And so, like, I think if we treat both warm and just to really like wrap this up, I think if we just treat your warm, cold, or whatever market that you have, right, as just one thing, which is just people, I think this will give you a better frame and better idea of like how you really want to help people and how you want to approach them. Make sense? Right? And so think of them as we go. They're not just a number. Okay. And so that's that, and of course we also talk about like the two strategies on basically how to really approach your semi-warm market, which is a huge market. Really, really huge, by the way. Especially if you're like in your 30s and everything else is huge. Even if you're 20, it's still huge because you have a ton of people that you met also during school, yada yada, right? So that's what I did. Okay. So now that's basically it. I hope this is helpful for you guys. And for whoever that's watching a recording right now, I just saw the comments. Elton, yeah, I'll catch up and see whether good fit. Yeah, it's the same wavelength, right? Because some people just don't like, then it doesn't matter. Okay, so hope this helpful for you guys. Maybe you want to share your lessons or thoughts inside the recording once I post it or whatever it is, so on and so forth. But you guys can watch this as well. We'll send out, just check out the school community, and I'll see you guys very soon. Okay, just see y'all and bye-bye.